This happened around the start of the year. I was home alone, sitting in my bed at about 2:45 in the morning. I was just starting to fall asleep when I heard a very loud noise downstairs in my kitchen. It sounded like someone was pounding really hard on my kitchen window, but it wasn't just once, it was constant and didn't stop. I remember going downstairs to investigate. All the lights in my house were off, so it was pitch black. I didn't bother turning them on in case someone was outside and would be able to see me if I did. Anyway, I walked into my kitchen and froze with fear when I saw a man. He looked a little old and had medium-length hair. He was looking into my kitchen and pounding on my window. I don't think he saw me because all my lights were off. After seeing this, I checked to see if all the doors were locked, and they were. That relieved me a little. I ended up going back upstairs, locking my bedroom door, and trying to go to sleep. But it didn't work. I was terrified, and the pounding on my window didn't stop until about 6 in the morning. That's when I went downstairs again, and I couldn't see the man, so I just assumed he left. I didn't unlock the doors until my mother got home that night. This was a time when I didn't have a phone, so I wasn't able to call the police. It still haunts me, and I now have nightmares every so often about that night. I just hope something like this never happens again. One night, I was sitting with my siblings watching TV when I heard a knock at the door. It was a little weird because it was 11 p.m. and we weren't expecting anybody. I decided to turn down the TV and hush my siblings to see if the person would go away, but they didn't. They kept knocking, and after about 5 minutes, I decided to answer the door. Looking back, it was a stupid idea. I should have just guided my siblings to the middle room and grabbed the nearest weapon in case they decided to break in. But, moving on. I grabbed my pocket knife and hid it in my hand, close to my side, while I called out to the person on the other side of the door. When I asked who was there, it turned out to be my ex-boyfriend. We'll call him Jay for now. Jay asked if I could come out to talk, and I declined. He didn't like this too much and decided to get pushy, saying he wasn't going to leave until I talked to him. I didn't want to freak my siblings out, so I opened the door and stepped out. I asked him what he wanted, and he sat down on our porch, motioning for me to sit next to him. I didn't, and instead sat in front of him, demanding an explanation as to why he was there so late at night. He just said he wanted to talk and moved to sit next to me, making me uncomfortable enough to move away. That didn't work. He scooted closer and grabbed my hand. He started spewing things like "I miss you" and "Will you take me back?" At that point, I wasn't having it and told him to go back home while trying to stand up again. This is when things got scarier. He grabbed my hand and yanked, throwing me back down while he stood over me and tried to kiss me. I felt him knock the pocket knife from my hand, which angered him. I kept trying to fight him off, but he just held on tighter to where I felt my wrists bruising. Eventually, when I was finally able to get my leg free enough to kick him, he let go. I took off at a dead sprint into the woods to lead him away from my house. He was quicker than me and grabbed me again, causing me to twist my ankle as I tried to wiggle myself from his tight grip. I wrapped my leg around his and twisted with such force, we both fell to the ground with a thud. I got to my feet and ran back into my house, locking the door behind me. I stood there, now noticing the tears running down my face, as I guided my siblings to the bedroom and turned off the light. I sat there with them, and we all cried as he pounded the door, yelling curses at me. This continued until I heard my friend's dad from next door yell for him to stop, and things grew silent. That was the end of that nightmare. This one day I was home alone in the kitchen, engrossed in cooking. Having recently stepped outside, I had forgotten to lock the front door, assuming my roommate would be returning home soon. As I continued cooking at the stove, I heard the door creak open, followed by the sound of someone taking a seat at the table. Initially, I didn't pay much attention, assuming it was my roommate. Without looking away from the stove, I casually asked my roommate about their day. No response. That's weird. So I turn around and there is a dirty homeless man sitting at my table. Startled, I asked him if he was a friend of my roommate's, assuming there must have been a mix-up. The man nodded and affirmed that they were hanging out. However, he made a crucial mistake by mentioning the wrong name. It became apparent to me that this man was drunk or under the influence of drugs, and he seemed oblivious to the fact that he had entered the wrong house. My instincts kicked in, and I became cautious, knowing I had to handle the situation carefully. Attempting to coax him to leave, I assured him that he must have made a mistake and was in the incorrect house. He insisted he needed to tie his shoes before he left, repeatedly questioning whether he was indeed in the right place. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, I decided to take matters into my own hands and offered to help tie his shoes since he seemed unable to do so himself. He accepted my help, all the while asking if I knew where his friend was. I truthfully replied that I did not, but suggested he call from outside. Eventually, I managed to guide him out the front door, ensuring my own safety as I did so. However, as he made a feeble attempt to re-enter the house, I swiftly shut and locked the door just in time, preventing him from coming back inside. The man's demeanor quickly shifted. He began banging on the door, shouting angrily in frustration. The commotion alerted others in the house to the unfolding situation, and we collectively realized something was gravely amiss. Recognizing the urgency, we dialed the police, desperately awaiting their prompt arrival. Regrettably, it took an agonizingly long time for them to show up, during which the man had wandered away. Reflecting upon the incident, I shuddered at the realization that had this individual not been simply an intoxicated and confused intruder, the consequences could have been dire.